Hello and welcome back to Halfmoon Academy. I'm your host, Kaylee Sapphire, if you don't already know me. Halfmoon Academy is a place, I like to call it a virtual school of conscious creation. So it's a place where we're exploring how our own individual consciousness impacts the world around us. This is a very, I like to call it rationally optimistic, podcast. I don't like calling it a podcast because I feel like it's a boring word, but it is a podcast, and I'm so happy and so excited to announce to you that Halfmoon Academy is now on YouTube and Apple Podcasts. Before it was just on Substack and Spotify. So we're expanding, we're growing. As you can see, I'm including video now. Just like before, if you remember my very first episode, I was saying done is better than perfect, meaning I'm wanting to just start my podcast rather than make it perfect and just wait and give myself all of these restrictions. And the same is kind of true with video now. I'm trying to do video in a way that's more fun and interesting and honestly creative for me. I'm using photo booth right now, you can see, in screen recording because it's reminding me of being a kid. I used to always love to make movies on iMovie when I was a kid, and also using wired headphones reminds me of being a kid. And I think all of the stuff we're doing here needs to be founded in play. So in this episode, we're going to be talking about coming a full circle, which is really about returning back to yourself, returning back to your original vision of your life. But overall in season 2, we're going to be talking a lot about death and birth and the rawness of being a person, what it really means to be a person and to build a legacy, because as you know, we're going into the year of the horse very soon. So I'm really excited for that. Another surprise little new thing in this podcast is my brother created this really cool little sound intro for us. So I'm going to play that. I think you remember last time I used it a few times. I had this wind chime. Actually, now it's connected above my bed. I'll do it for you now. Can you hear that? But my friends London and Jacqueline gave me that for my birthday, so I used that. And he was inspired by this wind chime that he saw in this town in Michigan where he lives. And it was crazy because he used that audio sample from a video he took of the wind chimes in the snow. And when I was visiting in Thanksgiving, I was taking a walk by myself and I took a video of the wind chimes on this person's tree. And when he sent me this audio, I was like, are those the wind chimes? And then I sent him the video I took in November and he was like, oh my God, yeah, those are the same wind chimes. So it's cool, inspired by the wind chime theme, by the nature theme. So I really hope you like that. And before we get into the episode, I'd like to tell you up front, we're running spiral studies back starting in the spring. So this next cohort is going from spring equinox to summer solstice on the northern hemisphere. And then what is that? Fall equinox to winter solstice in the southern hemisphere. So whatever hemisphere you're in, you're more than welcome to join. It is in a time that's kind of catered to people in the US and in South America. But I do already have people from Australia that are going to be joining us. So if you're interested in joining a community of people around the world who are resonating with you, who want to connect with people who think in a similar way, what I think is so cool about this is we're really building a global community. These are people I already have plans to meet up with on my next travels. We're literally building community and making real friendships. So if that's resonating with you, I encourage you to actually join my free spiral seminar. This time is a new one. It's going to be live. It's going to be February 12th. So check the show notes below if you're interested. Last thing before I get into the episode is if you are resonating with Halfmoon and you haven't done so already, or maybe you're now listening on YouTube or Apple Podcasts where this podcast is pretty new, please, it would mean so much to me if you gave this a 5-star review. And even if this specific episode struck a chord with you, resonated with you, if you have questions, if you have things you want to add, go ahead and leave a comment. I'm really good at responding to these comments here, and I love to continue the conversation just so this doesn't feel like it's this totally one-sided thing, which it really doesn't ever feel like that because you guys are so awesome. But anyway, that's pretty much it. So let's go ahead and get into the episode, and I hope you love the little sounds that my brother made. We're We're always talking about life as though it's a straight line and as though that there's like something to arrive to. But what if there is no arrival? What if your entire life is meant to be lived and experienced, and it's actually your fixation on changing and wanting that's separating you from the actual act of living and being in your body? Today's episode is titled Coming a Full Circle, and it is in honor of the new year. The Gregorian calendar said that the new year started January 1st. We have the Lunar New Year coming up on February 17th, but honestly, I think for most of us here on planet Earth, we really consider spring the new year, like the spring equinox, which is a little bit interesting to think about now because that would mean that in the southern hemisphere there's a different new year, and then what about the people on the equator? So, I don't know, food for thought, but let's start off by checking in. If you're new here, hi, I'm Kaylee Sapphire, and it is my honor, my pleasure, my privilege to welcome you here to Halfmoon Academy. So what we talk about here is, I like to call it a virtual school of conscious creation. So we're talking about how you can influence your reality, but really we're talking about the intersection between consciousness and everything that we're doing here. I personally believe that we are going through a renaissance. We as an entire Earth population, and what we're going through right now, seeing all the chaos and the destruction, is actually really an illusion. I kind of want to pause on that for a second, because the truth is we are being fed so much negativity. I think it's really important to acknowledge the truth in that, and the fact that there is true, deep reason to be grieving and to be angry. There really is, but there is also this element that I've noticed where rather than actually doing anything when people are presented with this news, it actually drives them just deeper into themselves. Like being negative and pessimistic about life as a whole and saying like, what's the point of all of this? Why are we even here? Who is God if God would allow all of this to happen? I think if we look back at life as like the entire broader context of human existence, there has always been deep injustice, inequities, profound suffering, and that doesn't ever make it okay, but it means that it's actually part of the human experience to exist within duality and to be a part of a greater story. And that's really what I want us all to be connected to in season 2. I want us to get deeper into what it actually looks like to be human. I'm getting like heated because I'm so passionate about this. Why are we so afraid to be born and to die and to feel and to connect? I honestly got inspired by this whole season 2 in my time away, which I'll catch you guys up about. But this season is about the Renaissance. We are in a new renaissance. We are birthing something new in this death cycle we're experiencing globally, but in a deeper way, we're also coming a full circle. So I want to kind of start off this season by grounding us into a story where oftentimes in different indigenous cultures and different traditional cultures, they didn't so much view time as this line, right? I think the thing about the Gregorian calendar, I actually have a perpetual Gregorian calendar. Side note, I'll show you guys. Maybe I'll show you at the end of this episode. But, like, what am I trying to say here? So, before we had the Gregorian calendar, cultures had one calendar that would be repeated year after year. The thing about the Gregorian calendar is it's a little bit more, like, precise, right? There's 365 days and then we have the leap year, but it also shifted the way that we culturally perceive time. So if you think about it, since you were a kid, if you're using the Gregorian calendar, which chances are if you're on the internet you probably are, you have a calendar and you get a new one each year. I don't know if you use planners. When I was a kid I used to have one of those wall calendars, but I never really noticed the fact that having to go get a new calendar every year made me think of time like, okay, this year passed and now we have the next year. And it's like this kind of like complete separation from the year prior. Whereas like we have like the Celtic wheel of the year, or you have many different other indigenous calendars and ways that time is marked, and it's marked in a cycle. And that's what I want to talk and think about today before we even talk about moving forward, because we just had this new year. We had a celebration of 2025 to 2026, and I want to take some time to talk about my personal experience in coming full circle. Okay, so if you listen to season one, or if you follow me anywhere, you know that I experienced more change in 2025 in 1 year than I swear I've experienced in my entire life. So let's touch on that really quickly. In the Chinese calendar, 2025 was a year of the snake. It was a year of transformation and change. And I, like many of you, experienced that firsthand. So, a quick, super brief recap of what happened in 2025 for me is I decided to take a step away from my graduate program. I'm studying naturopathic medicine, and I was in my 3rd year. And I decided, honestly, pretty unwillingly at first, it kind of felt like a decision I was forced into. I needed to take time away. I needed to take like a break from going and being told what to study and what to think and what to learn, and experience my own self-study. So I had this intention to step away from school and grow my business and grow my philosophy to a deeper level. And let me tell you, that's exactly what happened. So if you don't already know, I have my own business that is combining deep work in the subconscious mind and the subconscious mind's connection to your health, and hair tissue mineral analysis, which is a hair test cut from the root. You basically take like 1 inch of hair, and then the hair test is analyzing the mineral content, the heavy metal content, and then the ratios of these minerals to each other, which gives you an overall kind of broad, I like to call it like an impressionistic picture of your overall health, your overall metabolic state. And it's very, very different from a very precise blood test. It's more of a broader, little blurrier picture, but it allows us to see more at the same time, in my opinion. It's a very deep rabbit hole that basically says like nutrition and nutritional balancing is truly the foundation of all of your health. So I had my own business. It started growing, and I started deepening my philosophy. I started noticing like everywhere I would look, I would see specific books, and they would be like highlighted to me, is the only way I can describe it. I would see like books on a shelf, and it would be like, that one, you have to buy it right now and read it. So of course, like if you're in this state, if you've ever experienced anything like this, you really like you can't be in school, especially in a doctorate program, at the same time. Like it genuinely was impossible. So I made the really hard decision to take a step away, and I decided to go to Bali. I had several friends there. My friend Madison, who's actually coming on this podcast in a later episode, she had a retreat there. She has a retreat business called House of Muse, so I went and joined her there. And then I expected to kind of like be in control of my life and my self-study. I did, side note, have that. I'm not sure if I touched on that, but I had the most like romantic, beautiful time alone throughout Asia. Like there was this one night in Japan where I was looking at like I think I was studying only specifically zinc, if I'm remembering correctly. And I was like outside on the street in Tokyo with my glass of wine and like some appetizers and like my notebook, and learning and studying and drawing these connections. It was like so good. I kind of separated from this like really rigid structure of waking up early, getting up late, or going to bed late, and then like studying in this set time. I would then like kind of flow with my work, and I would actually work a lot later, which was fun. Anyway, I ended up, long story short, having to change every single thing in my life. Like I was tested by the universe, by God, whatever you want to call it, to my limit, to the point where now I know with absolute certainty, absolute utter certainty, that God is real, the universe is real, the universe is conscious, and it has you. It has your back. You are here as part of a larger organism. If you remember, like the first episode I ever did, I was talking about like the idea of you are a seed and you are able to grow because within everything is the seed of everything, which is a deeper esoteric alchemical principle. So what I'm trying to get you to understand here is rational hope and the fact that every single year, dandelions grow in the spring. And dandelions are actually medicinal for our bodies in detoxifying our kidneys and our liver. The earth naturally grows plants, and dandelions just one example, that are appropriate to the season that affect our natural physiological mechanisms like detoxifying in the spring and like hibernating in the winter. We have this deep disconnection taking place within the earth right now where humans no longer see themselves as nature. We don't see ourselves as part of the earth. A lot of times, again, speaking very generally here, you might be well aware that we're nature, and if so, I'm very, very glad you're here too. I hope that we can just dive deeper into that idea together. But what I believe is that you, just like the dandelion, just like every other part of the earth as a whole, your desires are the way the earth is bringing itself back into balance. That's another idea we're going to deepen into in season 2. This idea of dharma. My new friend Shivani is actually coming on this podcast as well in later episodes, and she will be discussing that concept with us deeper, which is this idea that you have your innate purpose, but it's more so, in Shivani's words, a frequency that really transcends all of your lifetimes. What if you, in whatever you wanted, what if you actually pursuing what you wanted and becoming who you wanted to be were actually part of you healing the earth? That's what I believe is true. And I believe that because I believe that we are inherently connected to this larger consciousness. There's a verse in scriptures, Christian scriptures, that say, like, God gives you the desires of your heart. That's in, I think, Psalms. And there's this idea of like, oh, God will give you what you want. God gives you the desires of your heart. It's later in the New Testament, what you ask for, you will receive. If you seek it, you will find. And that's true. But what if we even take it a layer deeper? God gives you the desires of your heart, meaning God planted what you wanted in your heart for you to then fulfill. How much more boring would life be if you kind of separated your desires with your purpose? Your desires actually are your purpose. And I want to deepen into that a little more and ask you too. I'm pretty sure, like, if you're drawn to this podcast and my account, so you're not somebody that's just like, I just want to have a nice car and a house and a really big house and millions. Probably not. There's nothing wrong with wanting a lot of money, but wanting a lot of money as the goal versus wanting a lot of money so that your dreams and ideas can be fully resourced is a very, very different energy. So if you want something, I challenge you to really ask yourself, why do you want it? So with that being said, let's go a little bit deeper now, and I want to bring you into a story of me with the new year. So I constantly, throughout the year of the snake, was shedding. I was shedding, letting go of things. I had to leave school. I left my apartment. I ended up fully moving out of that apartment. I ended up living with my sister and brother-in-law for a month, and then I found this new apartment, which is in the middle of a country town, far from my friends, like 30 minutes, and also right near my craniosacral friend and teacher, which, again, we'll talk about later in the episode. She's actually going to come too in this season. So I was kind of like shedding all of this. I left school, I left everything, and then I got back here in June, and then I went back to school. And I also never really touched on this, but I had some of my stuff and furniture that I didn't want to get rid of in a storage unit in my old town, which is Encinitas. It's a beach town right north of San Diego. And I like, how do I put this? I let go of everything. My clothes were in storage, a lot of my books stayed in storage. It was a small storage unit. I didn't have that much, but I just kind of like completely separated from my old life. And I expected to just kind of let it all go. But what was interesting is I found myself in the winter, like really slowing down and having this deep craving and this deep desire for more. Like I wanted more and I wanted this like feeling that I felt in January and February. So going back to January and February 2025, when I was preparing to leave and let go of everything, I did the most healthy thing I could have ever done for myself, which was deeply relax and deeply regulate my nervous system. I would take these long walks on the beach every single day. I got this new couch that was like modular, like it can move around. I don't know if you've seen them, but like it's like the kind that like you can separate. Like it's like two little like twin size cushions that are stacked on top of each other and then you could like separate them and make this like big like bed thing. And I would have my friends over. I was always lighting candles. I had flowers. I had like crystals and my entire room and apartment was like such a true expression of who I am. And the way I was dressing every single day was such a true expression of who I was. And I would sleep and I would read and I would rest and I never felt guilty. And I was also building my business and growing and like being so driven in my purpose. But it was like this feeling I get when I think about it. I'm like, oh, it was this feeling like I felt so safe and so still. And I felt like I don't know, I felt like almost I had this gravity to me, if that makes sense. And then through all of this shedding and changing and growing, I expanded in so many ways, but then I also kind of like lost some of these aspects. So at the end of the year, I started like the end of the year, I would say December, right after my finals week. I went to this training called Neural Manipulation in Salt Lake City with Shelly. And me and Shelly went there, and what it is it's like basically very light touch. Like, if you're watching the video, you can see my hand. You basically put your hand on the skin, and then you're trained to use certain fingers to like it sounds a little bit crazy, but you very gently can feel like the skin, and then you can feel into like what is the fascia, what's the muscle, what's the bone, and then where are the nerves. So it's like a very, very precise technique of feeling nerves, and we were specifically working on the cervical nerves and like up in the neck and the upper traps, and then this nerve called the phrenic nerve, if you know biology, which connects down to your diaphragm, and it's important for a few other things without getting too specific. But what the actual act of that training looked like was day in for 3 days. We'd be inside like this hotel ballroom. You'd have like a massage table in front of you, and then you would feel like you would get taught specific techniques. So it's like, okay, so this, you're going to feel this, this, and this. You're going to do it on your partner, which was Shelly, and then you switch. And the treatments felt good, but it's also like how the philosophy is you're supposed to listen. And you start off by feeling the person and you feel what they're like where you're drawn to, and you give a very specific targeted treatment for that. And what the training is like you have to just know all of these steps. So you're not like getting a treatment where you go fully in and you like release what needs to be released and you're listening to what the person needs. It's more like you're getting taught and then you're kind of like getting this stuff opened up and then you have to move on. So it was actually very exhausting and very dysregulating, and also the energy me and Shelly share is very, very intense. So a brief quickly touching on this point is that me and Shelly actually met during neural manipulation level 1. We were at level 2. So we met about over a year ago. It was like Thanksgiving 2024. And we did this training. And then after this training, working on the brain, both of us became telepathic. We started knowing things about everything. We started being able to communicate with each other. And we didn't actually talk for 2 months after that. Then we met up and we both recounted our experiences, and we were both like, what? Like, how is this possible? So Shelly lives on this farm, this flower farm, and it's gorgeous. And I actually would go up then throughout the year when I wasn't traveling, and we would trade sessions on each other and like deepen this work because it felt like we were tapping into this other energy that was really specific and not just our training. So we did that, and then that's actually how I ended up moving to this town. And I live on the same street as Shelly now, which is funny. I just walked up to her house yesterday and we made pesto. It was so fun. But anyway, the point of that is that we went to this training and it was really intense and really exhausting. And I actually thought after that that I wasn't even going to continue with the training anymore. There are 5 levels and we only did 2. Shelly's already done 3, and then she's doing 4 like next week, but I haven't signed up for anything else. And I was like, yeah, I'm not doing that again. And then what ended up happening was right after I got back from the training, I got the flu so severely. I was bedridden with 104, 105 fever for 5 days straight. I would sweat through my clothes, completely soaking them at least every hour. And I'm not somebody who gets sick. Like, I don't get colds a lot. I used to get sick a lot as a kid, but part of my healing journey was understanding like how to strengthen my own immune system. So I really don't get sick a lot. And on day 5, I went outside. For the first time, I had like the strength to actually step outside, and I sat on the grass and I like closed my eyes and I asked God, and I was like, why am I not getting better? And the message I got like instantaneously was, you don't want to return to the life you created. You're not enjoying it. So I paused and I thought to myself, how hard I pushed myself. Because in the fall, I was taking about roughly half of a course load of classes. I was back in school and I was taking on so many clients in my business, and the work, the actual nature of the work that I do with people is very, very intense, and it's actually intense for me, which is something I don't really talk about. But what I do with my clients is I'm working on the physical, the spiritual, and the subconscious level. And I'm drawing a connection with people with complex chronic conditions, people who have gone to numerous practitioners without avail, and come to me and I figure out what's going on. And I actually do. But the way that my brain works is I get so fixated and I'm ruminating on the cases and on all the data I have until I understand like how I can solve their problem, which is ultimately just connecting them to themselves. But I have to be so in tune to mirror back to them, like, what is it that you need? Like, what is it that's kind of causing this imbalance in your body? Okay, so that's rigorous. At the same time, I was working in a free health clinic. I was working at my school's clinic. What else was I doing? I was working for a nonprofit at my school. What else? I was doing this podcast, and I was trying to really post consistently on social media. Okay, that is a lot. That's a lot for anyone. And when I went to this training, I went right after my finals week. So I finished my last final Thursday morning, and then I left Thursday afternoon. Friday, Saturday, Sunday, I do the training, and we flew back Sunday night. Sunday night is when I got sick, and I had clients scheduled all day Monday throughout the week. It was like a super packed week, and I had to cancel every person. First, I just rescheduled some people, and then I like literally had to cancel like every single person and have this complete like clear slate, like fresh start. What do I want to do? Where do I want to go? What do I want to be? And like giving myself that time, giving myself that rest really helped me come to terms with, oh, I'm not paving a way forward. I'm coming back. I'm coming back to the original vision I had for my life. I'm coming back to the desires that I journaled about in 2021, 2022. Like, I'm not doing anything new. Sometimes you don't need anything new. You just need to return to the original vision of your life. The winter is this time of stillness and quiet and reflection, and let's let it be that, right? It's January and we're right in the middle of winter. We're in winter all the way, technically, until March 21st or 22nd. So we kind of need to take time, if we're in winter, to honor the truth that winter is. That winter is an equally integral part of creation. Winter is the season of death. It's the season of pausing and being still and being quiet. And it's kind of this season of surrendering everything. I'm getting this picture in my mind of a forest and trees, and in the winter how all of the trees surrender their leaves and they're completely barren, and everything is kind of given as an offering back to the earth. All of the work, all of the growth that's expressed in the leaves and the fruits and the flowers throughout spring, summer, fall, it's gone. But what remains behind that is the branches that have grown. Almost like, what is that skeleton within us, within our spiritual bodies, that through our growth cycles strengthened and solidified so that it could withstand and it could be still. The tree did grow, and there's markers of the growth of the tree even in the winter. And winter is such an act of surrender because truly you don't know that the tree will come back. You don't know the leaves will grow again. And especially for those little plants in the brush on the forest floor, the seeds that were scattered, you don't know if they're going to grow. You surrender all of it into nature, into the natural order of things and the way that they are. And from there, you wait and you trust. And you're not in control anymore, and you're not putting in force or effort. You're just letting go. What is it that you wanted? What are the seeds that you created in the spring, in the summer, in the fall? What did you bring into maturation so then it could be planted? And then now that it's winter, wait and trust. After I got better, I ended up going into my storage unit and pulling out a lot of my books and my clothes and things that I forgot about. And what was so interesting to me is, with that much time between me now and when I put those things into storage, I was so clearly able to discern in all of my pieces of clothing, what did I purchase and buy that was truly an expression of me, and then what was just kind of something that filled space. So I began clearing out now, kind of parsing through the rest of my clothes and bringing back, and I remember I had this dress from when I went to Italy with my best friend in 2022. I remember all of these really specific, beautiful memories, and it was almost remembering these parts of myself, remembering these chapters of my life, and remembering how far I've come, but also how much I've always wanted the same thing. So for coming a full circle, I want to ask you, what is it that you've always wanted? What did you want to be as a child? What did you want when you were a teenager? If you are a teenager now listening to it, what do you want now? What did you want last year? And allow yourself to come a full circle. I think that we oftentimes are unwilling to accept how perfectly simple life really is. We don't have to try to make it more complicated than it is. I've been reading this book called Bach Flower Essences, and it is a philosophy essentially that's saying that physical disease that's manifested in the body is sort of this last thing that expresses itself. The first thing that happens is that the body or the mental body disconnects to the higher self or the soul. The soul has this instruction manual and this purpose that then is fulfilled through the mind and the body, but when the mind takes another way, the last thing to show is the body. And what it explains is that you don't really need these complex healing things. You don't need all of these supplements or all of this whatever. All you really need is understanding the beauty and the simplicity of all that is. Let's strip away whatever noise we had in the fall. And let's really dive deeper into the stillness of winter, into the act of surrendering, into the act of quiet, and the act of coming a full circle. What are you circling back to? What did you leave behind? What is the truth that has always been true that you keep coming back to and anchor into that? I think that that's pretty much all that I want to share with you today in the first episode. But I want to kind of close this off by really encouraging you to ground into stillness and honor the winter for what it really is. The winter is stillness. What did you let go of? What are you coming back to? And how can you kind of just sit and surrender into the rest of this time here? Let's go a little bit more slowly now as we continue into this winter. And even more than going slowly, I think operating from stillness and rest gives us this deep, profound sense of clarity of where we really are. If we truly want more, we have to honor the law of creation and destruction. There's the law of analogy, which we talked so much about in season 1, as above, so below, as within, so without, if this is your first time jumping into Halfmoon. But now let's talk about the fact that everything becomes created and then everything destroys. There's this natural law that I like to call the law of oscillation, that we're expanding and we're contracting. And we aren't contracting back into what we were before, but just like the tree grows and then it loses its leaves and only the growth of the branches remain, is how I see it. And it's kind of this act of like compressing and solidifying the growth that we did and stripping everything away to see what really changed. We're going to get more into that and this idea of like looping that we talk about a lot. And we are going to be talking about the year of the horse and how we are going to be driving ourselves forward into our goals and our legacy. But for now, just until next week, I leave you with these questions. What did I naturally let go of as I went into winter? What am I returning to? And how is what I'm returning to the same truth that has carried me my whole life? Thank you so much for watching my first episode of season 2 in Halfmoon Academy, and I am so excited to see you next week. Bye, everybody.